Hello, and welcome back to Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way, featuring me, Lizzy Co, and The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Last week, I looked at week 5 of this program titled Recovering a Sense of Possibility. So, what I'm going to do is talk about how all of that went, and then we're going to dive into week 6, which is titled Recovering a Sense of Abundance. So, let's do this check in first. Question 1. How many days this week did you do your morning pages? Are you starting to like them at all? How was the experience for you? I did my morning pages 6 out of 7 days this week, which surprised me because I didn't feel the lift at all. I had the experience similar to last time where I went to go check how many days I had done, thinking it would be just 2 or 3, and it was actually double that. So that was really interesting to see that habit starting to sink in. And it's really encouraging because I have a hard time forming habits. So I feel like this forgiving tack I've taken with myself is starting to pay off. By not trying to get it perfect and get every 7 days, I'm starting to get more days. And maybe that will lead up to every day. And if I get there in that way, I still got there. And that's the lesson, I think. Question 2. Did you do your artist date this week? I I'm finding myself like forgetting about the artist date, but like looking back on the week and the way I spent my time, I notice I do spend a lot of time in quiet contemplation already in my life. So I feel like maybe that's why I'm not thinking to include it, because a lot of my solo time outside of work, when I'm just, in charge of what I do with myself, a lot of that time I spend just taking care of myself anyway. So maybe that's an excuse. Who knows? Question 3. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? Um, I I don't know if it counts as synchronicity, but I'm noticing that um, in my day job, where I'm in charge of making sure that a lot of different people are getting along with each other and getting their jobs done, I'm finding that that group of people is getting along really well, and they're all in good spirits, and they're all really excited about what they do, and they all seem really happy to be there. And not that they didn't before, but I'm noticing an extra level of just joy within the space that maybe wasn't there before. And I've noticed that level of joy increasing along with my progression through this program. So I feel like the satisfaction and drive and focus that I'm gaining from these exercises is leaching into that area of my life as well, for the better, I would say. And last question, were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. Um, I think the continuing issue of just focusing on balance between my day job and my home life. Um, Remembering that it's just as important to take care of myself at home as it is to take care of everybody at work. Um, and, said out loud, it feels obvious. I can't pour from an empty cup. I can't take care of anybody if I can't care for myself first. All of those things are true. So I think just being a busy woman in my late 30s is the struggle I'm struggling with this week more than anything else. So that all being said, let's dive right into week 6, recovering a sense of abundance. First section, the great creator. I'm a believer, Nancy declares. I just don't believe God gets involved with money. Although she doesn't recognize it, Nancy carries two self-sabotaging beliefs. She believes not only that God is good, too good to do money, but also that money is bad. Nancy, like many of us, needs to overhaul her God concept in order to fully recover her creativity. For many of us, raised to believe that money is the real source of security, a dependence on God feels foolhardy, suicidal, even laughable. Oh, yeah, that would be me, for sure. When we consider the lilies of the fields, we think they are quaint, too out of it for the modern world. We're the ones who keep clothes on our backs. We're the ones who buy the groceries. And we will pursue our art, we tell ourselves, when we have enough money to do it easily. Yeah, this feels like it's fully calling out what I just spoke about, about work and art balance. All right, continuing on. All right, when we have enough money to do it easily. And when will that be? We want a God that feels like a fat paycheck and a license to spend as we please. Listening to the siren song of more, we are deaf to the still small voice waiting in our soul to whisper, "You're enough." Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added to it, we have been told, often since childhood, by people quoting from the Bible. We don't believe this. And we certainly don't believe it about art. Maybe God would feed and clothe us in a pinch, but painting supplies? A museum tour of Europe? Dance classes? God's not about to spring for those, we tell ourselves. Yeah, relatable. I grew up Catholic where suffering was king. Like the God of my childhood was not about to pay for my flute lessons. We cling to our financial concerns as a way to avoid not only our art but also our spiritual growth. Our faith is in the dollar. I have to keep a roof over my head, we say. Nobody's going to pay me to be more creative. We are awfully sure about that. Most of us harbor a secret belief that work has to be work and not play, and that anything we really want to do, like write, act, dance, must be considered frivolous and be placed a distant second. This is not true. We are operating out of the toxic old idea that God's will for us and our will for us are at opposite ends of the table. I want to be an actress, but God wants me to wait tables and hash joints, the scenario goes. So if I try to be an actress, I will end up slinging hash. Thinking like this is grounded in the idea that God is a stern parent with very rigid ideas about what's appropriate for us. And you'd better believe we won't like them. This stunted God concept needs alteration. This week, in your morning pages, write about the God you do believe in and the God you would like to believe in. For some of us, this means, what if God's a woman and she's on my side? For others, it is a God of energy. For still others, a collective of higher forces moving us toward our highest good. If you are still dealing with a God consciousness that has remained unexamined since childhood, you are probably dealing with a toxic God. What would a non-toxic God think of your creative goals? Might such a God really exist? If so, would money or your job or your lover remain your higher power? Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, when I was young, I was raised Catholic, and it was everything you might expect it to be. And at no point did I ever feel like a precious child of God. I always just felt like uh, some sort of nasty little creature who had already somehow been ruined, even though I hadn't gotten a chance to live life yet. You know, childhood thoughts. Many of us equate difficulty with virtue, and art with fooling around. Hard work is good. A terrible job must be building our moral fiber. Something, a talent for painting, say, that comes to us easily and seems compatible with us must be some sort of cheap trick not to be taken seriously. Oh, shit, that's absolutely how I approach things. Whenever I master something, I'm just like, well, alright, on to the next thing. You know, this, now that it's easy, it's no longer something I can take seriously, even though a year ago I couldn't do this for shit. Oh, this book just continually is calling out my bullshit. Oh, how dare you, Julia Cameron? Moving on. On the one hand, we give lip service to the notion that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. On the other, we secretly think that God wants us to be broke if we are going to be so decadent as to want to be artists. Do we have any proof at all for these ideas about God? That reminds me of a conversation I had with a staff member of mine years ago. And they were telling me about all of these limits they had they were placing on themselves. And after they finished speaking, I just looked at them and I said, "Who told you to do all that?" And they just kind of froze for a second and they realized just like, "Oh, nobody did. I've just picked these rules up from society along the way." And they had just never been given permission to consider the validity of all of those things before. So that's something I'm really proud of in my past career. Looking at God's creation, it is pretty clear that the Creator itself did not know when to stop. There is not one pink flower or even 50 pink flowers, but hundreds. Snowflakes, of course, are the ultimate exercise in sheer creative glee. No two alike. This creator looks suspiciously like someone who just might send us support for our creative ventures. We have a new employer, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous promises recovering alcoholics. If we take care of God's business, He will take care of ours. To battered AA newcomers, such thinking is a lifeline. Desperate for a way to achieve sobriety, they cling to this thought when worried about their own precarious abilities to live effectively. Expecting divine help, they tend to receive it. Tangled lives smooth out, tangled relationships gain sanity and sweetness. Or in my case, you just burn all of the toxic bridges in your life and replace everybody that sucked with people who are actually healthy for you. So, 6 of 1. Huh. To those less desperate, such assurances sound foolish, even deceptive, like we're being conned. The God who has a job for us, the God who has fulfilling work, the God who holds abundance and dignity, who holds a million possibilities, the keys to every door? This God can sound suspiciously like a flim-flam man. That's an adorable expression, flim-flam man. All right. Every once in a while, I get a reminder that this book was not written in present day, and I really enjoy it. And so, when it comes time for us to choose between a cherished dream and a lousy current drudgery, we often choose to ignore the dream and blame our continued misery on God. We act like it's God's fault we didn't go to Europe, take that painting class, go on that photo shoot. In truth, we, not God, have decided not to go. We have tried to be sensible, as though we have any proof at all that God is sensible, rather than see if the universe might not have supported some healthy extravagance. The Creator may be our father, mother, or source, but it is surely not the father, mother, church, teacher, or friends here on earth who have instilled in us their ideas of what is sensible for us. Creativity is not and never has been sensible. Why should it be? Why should you be? Do you still think there is some moral virtue in being martyred? If you want to make some art, make some art. Just a little art. 2 sentences. 1 rhyme. A silly kindergarten ditty. God likes art. That's the part my parents would ignore. God likes art and I make art. That's what God likes me for. Making art begins with making hay while the sun shines. It begins with getting into the now and enjoying your day. It begins with giving yourself some small treats and breaks. This is extravagant, but so is God, is a good attitude to take when treating your artist to small bribes and beauties. Remember, you are the cheapskate, not God. As you expect God to be more generous, God will be able to be more generous to you. What we really want to do is what we are really meant to do. When we do what we are meant to do, money comes to us, doors open for us, we feel useful, and the work we do feels like play to us. We will continue to work this week with our ideas surrounding money. We will see how our ideas about money, it's hard to get, you have to work long hours for it, you need to worry about money first and creativity second, shape our ideas about creativity. Yeah, I grew up in an environment, and I think still exists in an environment today, where money was never a guarantee, and it was unwise to spend money on something that wasn't needed, because chances are some sort of unexpected expense was going to pop up. The truck would break down, something in the house would break, and we would be stuck looking at whatever extravagance we had splurged on next to our broken sink. So I think I really want to follow the spirit of this, but I also want to acknowledge that not everybody can really fully access this the same way that I think I probably can now. And that makes me sad. I'm thinking a lot about the government shutdown and how it has shut down SNAP resources to all of the folks who need that food support. And I myself am a former beneficiary of SNAP, and it really helped me. And I didn't need it forever, but when I needed it, it made a huge difference. And when it helped me get to a point now where I am now able to uh, organize a business of my own to gather food donations for the Greater Boston Food Bank to help mitigate this awful crisis that we're in now, where nobody can access their food benefits anymore. So the point I'm trying to make is that supporting people is never wasted money or effort, because chances are they're going to want to repay that down the line once they have the ability to do so. Next section, appropriately titled Luxury. For those of us who have become artistically anorectic, yearning to be creative and refusing to feed that hunger in ourselves so that we become more and more focused on our deprivation, a little authentic luxury can go a long way. The key word here is authentic. Because art is born in expansion, in a belief in sufficient supply, it is critical that we pamper ourselves for the sense of abundance it brings to us. What constitutes pampering? That will vary for each of us. For Jillian, a pair of new-to-her tweed trousers from the vintage store conjured up images of Carole Lombard laughter and racy roadsters. For Jean, a single sprightly Gerber daisy perched on her night table told her life was abloom with possibility. Matthew found that the scent of real furniture wax gave him a feeling of safety, solidity, and order. Constance found luxury in allowing herself the indulgence of a magazine subscription, a $20 gift that keeps giving for a full year of images and indulgence. Speaking to images, one of the tasks this week was to gather a wide variety of images. Some of the prompts were focused on things that I would like to do if I didn't have any limits around money or time. Another of the prompt was, ways that I am mean to myself, or ways that, or reasons why I can't believe in a just God. But the overall theme was to not just write in words, but to express that in images. And especially as a person who has aphantasia, I can't picture things in my mind, so having the prompt of that image is especially powerful for me. And I think it hits in a different way than it does for the average person. All too often, we become blocked and blame it on our lack of money. This is never an authentic block. The actual block is our feeling of constriction, our sense of powerlessness. Art requires us to empower ourselves with choice. At the most basic level, this means choosing to do self-care. One of my friends is a world-famous artist of formidable talents. He is assured a place in history for his contributions to his field. He is sought after by younger artists and respected by older artists. Although not yet 50, he has already been singled out for Lifetime Achievement Awards. Nonetheless, this is an artist suffering in the throes of artistic anorexia. Although he continues to work, he does so at greater and greater cost to himself. Why, he sometimes wonders to himself, does his life's work now feel so much like his life's work? Why? Because he has denied himself luxury. Yeah, this is something I have to manage pretty actively in my own self as someone who, like I've mentioned many times, is in charge of people. And not only that, but I'm in charge of setting the tone in the room. Everybody's kind of looking to me. If I'm freaked out, they're going to assume there's a crisis. If I act as though business as usual is happening, everybody will kind of roll with it, even if things are going sideways. So what I have seen is that I have a harder time setting a good tone for the place when I don't feel like I have a lot to give. And I think that makes a lot of sense when I say it out loud. And what I've noticed is that when I deny myself little treats, I find myself resenting when the staff wants an attaboy because I'm like, well, where's my attaboy? Which is not a great attitude for a manager to have. So, in order to head off all of that, I have to make sure to give myself little moments of sunshine and little treats and little goodies and just remind myself that it's nice to do that for myself and that I am also one of the people I take care of. It's not just everybody else around me who gets care, it's me as well. Let me be clear that the luxury I am talking about here has nothing to do with penthouse views, designer clothes, zippy foreign sports cars, or first class travel. This man enjoys all those privileges, but what he doesn't enjoy is his life. He has denied himself the luxury of time. Time with friends, time with family, above all, time to himself with no agendas of preternatural accomplishment. His many former passions have dwindled to mere interests. He is too busy to enjoy pastimes. He tells himself he has no time to pass. The clock is ticking and he is using it to get famous. Recently, I bought myself a horse for the first time in a decade. Yeah, what I was speaking about with as far as luxury goes. Okay, maybe we're coming from a place of privilege here, Julia. All right. On hearing the good news, my accomplished friend moved immediately into his wet blanket mode, cautioning, well, I hope you don't expect to get to ride it much or even see it much. As you get older, you do less and less of the things you enjoy. Life becomes more and more about doing what you must. Ugh. Because I have learned to hear wet blanket messages for what they are, I was not too daunted by this prognosis. But I was saddened by it. It reminded me of the vulnerability of all artists, even very famous ones, to the shaming, I should be working side of themselves that discourages creative pleasures. In order to thrive as artists, and one could argue as people, we need to be available to the universal flow. When we put a stopper on our capacity for joy by anorectically declining the small gifts of life, we turn aside the larger gifts as well. Those of us, like my artist friend, who are engaged in long creative works will find ourselves leeching our souls to find images, returning to past work, to tricks, practicing our craft more than enlarging our art. Those of us who have stymied the workflow completely will find ourselves in lives that feel barren and devoid of interest no matter how many meaningless things we have filled them with. What gives us true joy? That is the question to ask concerning luxury, and for each of us the answer is very different. For Bernice, the answer is raspberries. Fresh raspberries. She laughs at how easily pleased she is. For the cost of a pint of raspberries, she buys herself an experience of abundance. Sprinkled on cereal, cut up with a peach, poured over a scoop of ice cream. She could buy her abundance at the supermarket and even get it quick frozen if she has to. They cost $1.98 to $4.50 depending on the season. I always tell myself they are too expensive, but the truth is that's a bargain for a week of luxury. It's less than a movie, less than a deluxe cheeseburger. I guess it's just more than I thought I was worth. For Alan, music is the great luxury. A musician when he was younger, he had long denied himself the right to play. Like most blocked creatives, he suffered from a deadly duo, artistic anorexia and prideful perfectionism. There were no practice shots for this player. He wanted to be at the top, and if he couldn't be there, he wouldn't be anywhere near his beloved music. Stuck and stymied, Alan described his block this way. I try to play and I hear myself, and what I can do is so far away from what I want to do that I cringe and then quit. Well, yeah, bud, that's why you practice. Working on his creative recovery, Alan began by allowing himself the luxury of buying a new recording a week. He stopped making music work and started making it fun again. He was to buy crazy recordings, not just high art. Forget high-minded aspirations. What sounded like fun? Alan began exploring. He bought gospel, country and western, Indian drum music. A month of this, and he impulsively bought a set of practice sticks at the music store. He let them lie, and 3 months later, Alan was drumming on the handlebars of his exercise bike while rock and roll blasted through his Walkman. 2 months later, he cleared a space in the attic and acquired a second-hand drum kit. I thought my wife and daughter would be embarrassed by how bad I was, he explained. Catching himself in his blaming, he cops, Actually, I was the one who was embarrassed, but now I'm just having fun with it and actually sounding a little better to myself. For an old guy, I'd say my chops are coming back. For Laura, a dime store set of watercolor paints was her first foray into luxury. For Kathy, it was a deluxe Crayola set, the kind my mother would never get me. I let myself do 2 drawings the first night, and one of them was a sketch of me in my new life, the one I am working toward. I think for me, the luxury I am allowing myself these days is um, getting a Lyft to come pick me up rather than riding my scooter around the city. Because I've had a lot of close calls, and and also my back has just been really bothering me lately. And one day I realized, like, why am I putting myself through all of this uh, nervousness and pain as I ride around the city when I can just, I have worked so hard to get to a point where I can afford to order a ride, and the only person who's making me feel guilty about it is me. So I think that's the thing I'm trying to allow myself and haven't yet. It's something I feel guilty about every time, and as I speak about it, I realize how unproductive it is to keep feeling guilty about it if I know that it's the right choice for me. For many blocked creatives, it takes a little work to even imagine ourselves having luxury. Luxury is a learned practice for most of us. Blocked creatives are often the Cinderellas of the world. Focused on others at the expense of ourselves, we may even be threatened by the idea of spoiling ourselves for once. Don't try to let go of Cinderella, my writer friend Karen advises. Keep Cinderella, but focus on giving yourself the glass slipper. The second half of that fairy tale is great. What we are talking about when we discuss luxury is very often a shift in consciousness more than flow. Although, as we acknowledge and invite what feels luxurious to us, we may indeed trigger an increased flow. Creative living requires the luxury of time, which we carve out for ourselves, even if it's 15 minutes for quick morning pages and a 10-minute mini bath after work. Creative living requires the luxury of space for ourselves, even if all we manage to carve out is one special bookshelf and a windowsill that is ours. My study has a window shelf of paperweights and seashells. Remember that your artist is a youngster, and youngsters like things that are mine. My chair, my book, my pillow. Maybe it's my inner child I'm indulging by just living by myself and not really pursuing a relationship. I just like that all the stuff I see in this room is mine. Designating a few things special and yours alone can go a long way toward making you feel pampered. Chinatown Anywhere offers a beautiful teacup and saucer for under $5. Secondhand stores often have one-of-a-kind china plates that make an afternoon snack a more creative experience. Much of what we do in a creative recovery may seem silly. Silly is a defense our wet blanket adult uses to squelch our artist child. Beware of silly as a word you toss at yourself. Yes, artist dates are silly. That's the point. Creativity lives in paradox. Serious art is born from serious play. Counting and exercise. For the next week, you will be discovering how you spend your money. Buy a small pocket notepad and write down every nickel you spend. It doesn't matter what it is for, how tiny the purchase, how petty the amount. Petty cash is still cash. Each day, date a page and count what you bought, what you spent, where your money went, whether it was for groceries, lunch in a diner, a cab ride, subway fares, or a loan to your brother. Be meticulous. Be thorough. And be non-judgmental. This is an exercise in self-observation, not self-flagellation. You may want to continue this practice for a full month or longer. It will teach you what you value in terms of your spending. Often our spending differs from our real values. We fritter away cash on things we don't cherish and deny ourselves those things we do. For many of us, counting is a necessary prelude to learning creative luxury. And next we have another fill-in-the-blank list like we saw in the last chapter. This one is titled Money Madness and Exercise. Complete the following phrases. 1. People with money are limitless. 2, money makes people relaxed. 3, I'd have more money if I had chosen a different career path. 4, my dad thought money was something to be earned with his own back. 5, my mom always thought money would just appear because dad would make it happen. 6, in my family, money caused a lot of arguments. 7, money equals authority. 8, if I had money, I'd have more control over my life. 9, if I could afford it, I'd live on my own. 10, if I had some money, I'd pay off my debt. 11, I'm afraid that if I had money, I would lose sight of what it's like not to have it and lose empathy. 12, money is what you make of it. 13, money causes human dynamics to shift. 14, having money is not permission to make all the decisions. 15, in order to have more money, I'd need to be meaner or choose a different career. 16, when I have money, I usually save it. 17, I think money would be nice to have more of. 18, if I weren't so cheap, I'd go on vacation. 19, people think money is something you shouldn't talk about. 20, being broke tells me that I'm not behaving in a sober way. That was refreshing. All right, so now let us review the tasks for this week 6. 1, natural abundance. Find 5 pretty or interesting rocks. I enjoy this exercise particularly because rocks can be carried in pockets, fingered in business meetings. They can be small, constant reminders of our creative consciousness. 2, natural abundance. Pick 5 flowers or leaves. You may want to press these between wax paper and save them in a book. If you did this in kindergarten, that's fine. Some of the best creative play is done there. Let yourself do it again. Yeah, there was so much nature play when I was a child in school. I wonder if that still happens. 3, clearing. Throw out or give away 5 ratty pieces of clothing. 4, creation. Bake something. If you have a sugar problem, make a fruit salad. Creativity does not have to always involve capital A art. Very often, the act of cooking something can help you cook something up in another creative mode. When I am STEMmied as a writer, I make soups and pies. Man, she is really riding that word STEMmied so hard in this chapter. 5, communication. Send postcards to 5 friends. This is not a goody two-shoes exercise. Send to people you would love to hear from. 6, list your favorites in the following categories: cars, dogs, flowers, trees, fruits, vegetables, desserts, entrees, musical groups, colors. 7, reread the basic principles. And we'll just review those really quickly. They are all about how creative is the natural order of life, and that it's something that we should embrace and not run from. Do this once daily. Read an artist's prayer, yours from week 4 or mine on page 223. Do this once daily. 8, clearing. Any new changes in your home environment? Make some. 9, acceptance. Any new flow in your life? Practice saying yes to freebies. And 10, prosperity. Any changes in your financial situation or your perspective on it? Any new, even crazy ideas about what you would love doing? Pull images around this and add to your image file. Fantastic. So I want to just go back and talk a little bit about the tasks I did last week. So I was drawn first to the reason I can't really believe in a supportive God. And I was tasked with listing 5 grievances. So I want to pull those up really quickly and just talk about sort of where my mind first went to there, because it kind of surprised me. Um, so a lot of what I had problems with had to do with just being uncomfortable in my body in all kinds of different ways. But um, I noticed that as I was listing all of those ways, I found myself feeling guilty that I was so self focused in all of my grievances around God. And I felt like I should be less selfish in my own grievances. So I just noticed that moment of self criticism and how harsh it seemed when I stepped back and watched myself doing that. Because I thought, like, wow, I would never criticize somebody's issues with God in that way, but for some reason I felt like it was okay to do to myself. Um, I, and we'll talk about kind of the more bummer stuff before I go on to the positive stuff. And in the same way, I noticed that a lot of the ways in which I'm mean to myself, I was asked to list 10, um, was, it had a lot to do with how I treat my body. And so I think what I'm starting to wonder is, did I spend so much time uncomfortable as a child that now I seek out that discomfort as an adult just to feel some familiarity in this crazy world that seems so unfamiliar now? So I think that's something to explore in the morning pages, I suppose. Um, and I was asked to, explore if I were 20 again and I had money, and what would I do? And a lot of my choices had to do with taking more risks. Um, and I think that's a product of knowing that I survive my 20s now, which I didn't always know was going to happen. And now I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I would go back and study abroad, even though that would probably be a challenge for somebody like me. I would throw more parties with friends. I would get more tattoos and piercings. I would express myself more. I wouldn't be so worried about not ruffling any feathers and pleasing everyone. I wouldn't play into everyone's assumption that I am young and don't know anything. I wouldn't. I would just set a lot more boundaries. Um, and lastly, I explored the task to create a collection of images around things I would do if I had either faith or money. And I found myself collecting images of, somebody teaching flute. I miss teaching flute, but the market dried up in the recession back in 2008, unfortunately, and I wasn't able to charge what I was worth and uh, maintain business because people just couldn't afford it. Um, and I have pictures of, redwood trees and sailing on beautiful lakes and somebody getting married and somebody with a ton of tattoos and piercings and a big pile of zines. And I'm just realizing that these are all things that have always been part of me, and I've always kind of been the same person. And there was just a long period of time where I was really struggling and I lost who I was. And now that I'm regaining myself, I feel so much safer in the world. I feel so much more capable of handling anything that comes my way. And maybe that's part of the magic of this program. Who's to say? But all that being said, I really appreciate you joining me again. I hope that you come back next time. Next week, we're going to explore week 7, which is titled Recovering a Sense of Connection. And once again, you have been listening to or watching Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way, featuring me, Lizzy Co, and The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I'll see you next time.